Good afternoon, guys. It is March 2nd, 2024. On this video here, I want to talk about over-engineering versus simplicity. Now, there's a few things that I want to talk about with vacuum cleaners. The simpler you keep a vacuum cleaner, the easier it is to work on, and the longer it's going to last. And most of the time, the cheaper the parts are, and the easier it is to keep running. Now, I want to mention a few things. Dysons are one of the worst offenders of being overly complicated in terms of repairability. Now, some would argue that Kirby's are overly complicated and over-engineered. I can understand where some people are coming from, but in my experience, they're really not as complicated as you might think. They're pretty straightforward and cut and dry. There's more going on in a Kirby than, say, like a Sanitaire. I mean, there's no argument that, but in terms of like them being more complicated, in my opinion, Kirby's are not as complicated as, say, a Dyson or a Miele. They're just not. They're a lot more cut and dry and pretty well laid out and engineered, and they've been that way for the last 30 years. And even if you go back to the older ones, they were even more simple. And so, yes, you have a little bit more going on than, say, a Sanitaire or something, but, when it comes down to it, I would much rather work on a Kirby over a Dyson any day with issues. Now, that being said, there's a lot to discuss. Now, I'll just talk about more common machines for the majority of consumers, because the majority of consumers, most likely the majority of consumers don't look at Sanitaires and Kirby's and, machines like that. Although I will say that from a longevity perspective, you can't go wrong with either one of those. They're designed to be rebuilt and rebuilt again, and then they're made with very, very thick, durable plastic and metal, and they just last forever. You can have one for 30 years and it'll still be running strong as long as you keep up on the maintenance, just the basic maintenance, and take care of them. Now, like I said, majority of consumers kind of look at, common machines like this. Now, I generally prefer bagged vacuum cleaners. I think they're just easier to deal with, and I think they're just more friendly with maintenance, because you don't have to clean out a bunch of extra stuff. Basically, just open it up when the bag is full, which is usually every 1 to 3 months, and then you pull it off, you throw it in the trash, and then you push a new bag on and close it up. very, very simple. You know, nothing to it. If I can get this back on. Yeah, it's not always easy to design one-handed, that's for sure. But yeah, I don't know. That was my problem. Yep, there we go. Okay. Realistically, it's easier than that. These you have to take off, dump them in the trash, and usually they make a mess. And then you have filters that you have to maintain every few months. Wash them out, let them dry for a day or two, and then you get all this dust on the outside of them. And Dysons aren't too bad at this, but you know, anytime you don't do any maintenance, that's what ends up happening. And the one thing I've noticed with bagless vacuum cleaners is people do not pay attention to the fact that there's a filter. I mean, 99% of the average consumers that I talk to have no idea that there's filters in a bagless vacuum cleaner. They don't have a clue, you know? They're like lost and they're like, oh, I had no idea. And, you know, so that's part of the reason why I recommend bagged machines, because when bags are full, that is your primary filter. And when it's full, it's just like a furnace filter. You know, when it's full, you pull it out, you throw it in the trash, and you put a fresh one in, and you're good to go for, 1 to 3 months, and you don't have to worry about it. But aside from that, when it comes to the repair side of things, Dysons are just way more complicated than a standard Bissell, Hoover, something of that nature. There's a lot going on. All of the components are down inside this ball, and to access them is just a pain in the butt. I mean, it is a major, major job. And there's all this stuff, and it's all plastic, and so it wears down stuff. These hoses down here have a tendency to crack, and you can't just pop these hoses out and push a new one in. You have to take the entire ball assembly apart, basically, to get to the hose and get it out, and it's just a real pain in the butt. Other thing I have seen is when hair accumulates on these brush rolls, you want to really keep the hair off of these brush rolls as much as possible. Because what will happen is all the hair will get caught up into here, and then it'll get really hot and it'll melt and destroy the gearbox in here that rotates the brush. And then by that time you have to buy a whole new head, which they are not cheap. They're at least $100, if not more. And it totally sucks. And so This is why I say that this is over engineering, because the fact that this is such a pain to get into, for one thing, let's just be real. It's planned obsolescence. They're they're not selling this with the intention of people repairing them. They're really not. And you'll see Dyson will advertise that this is supposed to be very durable. They'll do all these drop tests and everything. But realistically, that's going to be kind of short lived because eventually all this plastic is going to get really brittle. And that's not counting the common wear items, like I said, that hose down in the ball. That's not counting all the complications that you have to deal with. Now, I will say that this switch piece up in here is relatively easy. I've had to replace a cord on one of these Dysons before, and that actually was fairly easy. But if you want to get down into the ball or anything down there, that's really going to be a huge pain in the butt. And I have yet to see anybody actually be able to get into there because, yeah, so bottom line is if a motor goes out on one of these, it's goodbye vacuum. There's no putting in a new motor, there's no doing anything like that. It is done. And the other thing is they advertise that these filters are supposed to be lifetime filters. And what you do is wash them out. Now that's okay for a certain amount of time, but after a few years, they really should be replaced if you want this thing to last. Now, that being said, the OEM Dyson filters are very expensive. I mean, we're talking, $30, $40, $50 for a set of filters. I'm not sure exactly how much it costs. I haven't looked in a while. But nevertheless, they're not cheap. Hold on, I need two hands for this. Yeah, okay. So, now all of this black stuff is carbon dust from the motor. And you can't really wash that stuff out. So this would need to be replaced every few years. And you can get aftermarket filters, generic filters and stuff. And if you're out of warranty, you might as well just get the generic filters because it's really not going to make that much of a difference. And this is what I was talking about with the over engineering and overly complicated. You have all these screws in here that are ridiculous. You can't get into this. Like I said, here's that hose. It's down in there. It's all, yeah, it's And then by the time you get it, apart, good luck trying to get it back together, because there's just way too many corks and levers and switches and gears and Lord only knows what else. And it's just way overly complicated. This is over engineering at its finest. And Dyson is known for this. I mean, they are pretty much the world leader in over engineering in appliances. Miele's not too far behind, although I think they do, have it slightly better, but that's not saying much. These are just insane. I mean, and for a machine that you're paying $400, $500, $600 for, it's not worth it at all. You can get a Kirby for about that price, and it'll be 10, like 50 times easier to get into and actually work on and get parts for and keep running for decades compared to this. And so this is just what I'm trying to show here, is just how crazy this is. I mean, it really is ridiculous when you look at it. Now, that's not to say that these are bad machines, because they do a good job. I mean, they clean pretty well, especially on hard floors. Would I say that they're the best? Not really. But are they necessarily bad? No. I think in terms of the dirt separation system, I think these are one of the best in bagless vacuum cleaners. But that's about, where the praise ends. Because as soon as you're starting to work on these things, it's just a constant headache. And I mean, and the marketing really does gear towards, it's gonna last you forever, and it's going to, be durable, and you're not gonna have any problems and stuff, but they don't follow that up with making it serviceable and making it easy for the consumer to replace parts that go out. Because, I mean, those hoses, like I said, that are in the bottom are notorious for tearing, leaking, and when that happens, it sucks. You have no performance, and to get in there and actually get it replaced is just a nightmare. And so, yeah, not a fan of that at all. Now, on the flip side, let's look at a Bissell. Now, this can apply to the majority of vacuum cleaners these days, which is Bissell, Hoover, things of that nature. Especially when you get their simple machines like this. And really, at the end of the day, this is what I recommend. Now notice that there's this hose that goes up into the hose down to the floor, and this just goes right down to the floor. You can take out these screws, take out that screw, pull it out. You can replace that hose really cheap, really easy. Brush roll, you can replace this wheel assembly, you can replace the whole base, you can replace. You can actually get into the motor by undoing screws and get into the motor and replace the motor. The height adjustment knob can be replaced if need be, if that ever goes bad. And once again, there's that hose. You can take these two ends off, pull the whole thing out of the base, and then get access to the motor in there. And it's really, really, really easy to service and repair. If a hose rips, literally, you can basically just twist it, pull it out, and there you go. This whole hose assembly, anywhere from 15 to 20 bucks, gets you a new hose. You can take it, put it on, no tools whatsoever, no stupid clips to press, and you can just twist it into place, and then you put it on. Not a whole lot to it. Good to go. On this one, it's very complicated. Now, this is supposed to unclip, but where you unclip it is like really hard to get to, because you gotta push this tab, which is very, very hard to push. I can't even get it off. I've tried so many times. I can't do it. It's just ridiculous. So, once again, just more complicated than necessary, more engineering than necessary. And, you know, at the end of the day, it all comes down to keep it simple, you know? And I tell people all the time, keep it simple, you know, because the more you keep things simple, the longer they tend to last, the easier it is to get parts for them, the easier it is to get into them and actually work on them. And most likely, the less issues you're going to have. Because the more complicated you make things, the more problem spots come up. You know, that's just the way it is. And so, but yeah, so that's just something I wanted to talk about, because we're living in a world of just over engineering, over complicating things. You know, things being electronic, things being so high tech and so fancy, and just rather than just things being simple and just basic, no frills, they get the job done, they do what they need to do, and you're not trying to flash, anything. Dyson is notorious for making things flashy. They're trying to make them really flashy, really, fancy looking, and realistically, is it necessary? Not really. I mean, are they cool? Yeah, I'll give them that. They're cool. But when it comes to long-term investments in a vacuum cleaner, any of these three are easily going to be a lot easier to deal with when things go out than they will be on a Dyson. Because Dysons are just not, they're just not geared towards being repaired. Yeah, let's just put it that way. Um, so, anyway, it's totally up to you what you want to buy. I don't care what you buy. I don't care what you like. And I don't care what you don't like. But I just want to educate you on just some of the things that I have seen over the years as I've been working on vacuum cleaners for almost 15 years now. And it has been, I have seen a lot in those 15 years. I've seen quite a few machines that are pretty simple, and I've seen quite a few machines that are pretty complicated and confusing. So, but anyway, that about does it for this video. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and stay tuned for more videos.